Hello, everyone. Welcome to our K-1 and pass-through entity series. My name is Dave Stauffacher, the Senior Credit Trainer with Lenders Online Training, where we help lending and credit professionals say yes to good loans. Joining me today is Linda Keith, our company's founder and Chief Credit Training Officer. Hi, Linda.
Hello, hello.
Our question today is, where do we use actual cash flow to owners instead of available cash flow to owners when we're evaluating the credit worthiness of the individual? Linda, let's focus on the owners first.
So the owners, the individuals, the question is, do I just get the K-1? Do I just use guaranteed payments, distributions, maybe offset by charitable contribution or capital contributions, or something else that's right on the K-1? Is that what I do? Or when do I need to get the entire return and figure out what the company could pay them? So first, our focus is on the individual. We'll switch to the entity in just a moment. If I'm interested in an individual, first of all, as always, check your guidelines, because what's going to happen is on the back of my E, I'm going to see this list of entities. I'm going to have to find out what percentage ownership does the individual have. I'm going to have to consider whether I'm actually lending to one of those. And then I'll decide what I do need. So common guidelines for mortgage and others where you're not actually lending to the entity in question is 25% or less, we just get the K-1. And over 25%, we might get the full return. There's variations, but let me hit that first, then I'll explain the variations. You might wonder, well, wait, what? Why 25%? Well, here's the idea. At say 10% ownership, I think we'd all agree that if I only own 10%, I don't get to just go in and tell my partners, hey, I've decided to take more money and I'm going to. At 10%, we figure they don't have control enough of the entity to change what they're getting paid. So I get their K-1, see what they're taking, look at 3 years or maybe only 2, and I would guess that that's going to continue. Now, 90%, I think we could all agree. I could walk in the door and say, I've changed what I'm going to take, and I'm going to take this higher amount. The question is between 10% that I think we'd all be on board with and 90%, where is that crossover point? And we've picked, and by we, I would say the mortgage industry and many lenders have picked 25% with the idea that even at, say, 40%, you might have enough control to go in and say, I want to change what's happening here. And frankly, you might have guaranteed the debt and be inclined to try to save the company by, taking home less. So I usually reflect on that 25%, but I always say, check your guidelines, because I have seen guidelines that said 50% or 51%. So guidelines need to tell us on those individuals who are taking home money from an entity we are not lending to. If we are lending to them, David, what do we do on the flip side if we're looking at the entity analysis as to whether we count actual cash flow in an individual or not?
Excellent. Thanks for sharing.
Makes sense. You can change the question around if you like, David.
When you're dealing with the entity focus, many of us, we just look at what the business we are lending to do. How are they doing profitability? What type of cash are they generating? So we will begin by making the adjustments to profitability or losses by adding back the non-cash. So we have something that's available. But what we need to consider is, what about distributions and capital contributions? Now, these are distributions to everyone that's involved in the company that are available, not just maybe our individual borrower that maybe Linda was dealing with. So we need to be careful of everyone. And we see that on the M2 as to what type of distributions are going out to everybody. So we have our cash available. We have to make an adjustment, a subtraction for those type of distributions. Now, sometimes we also may have made some contributions as well, so we will make that adjustment add as well. But that is what we have as available for it, and then we compare that to what we have for outstanding debt. Cash flow available, what we are able to cover our our business debt service. Now, one other tricky thing, we'll say this is the bonus. What if we have personal guarantees? So individuals that are part of the management that have guaranteed it. So they're getting some distributions. May have guaranteed the debt, but other owners maybe did not guarantee it. That's kind of confusing. Linda, what about that option?
It is. So sure, I'll take that one. So when you have global analysis, often what you're doing is combining the entity you're lending to with the owners that are guaranteed to try to get a big picture. I had an interesting conversation actually recently with one of our LinkedIn folks who sent me a LinkedIn message and said, we really prefer the entity itself to have adequate debt coverage without any of this global. And I would say, I think that's a great preference. But if for some reason they don't, sometimes we are comfortable falling back on major guarantors, variety of reasons. So here's the piece that's important. If you are doing a global analysis, we believe it's important first to subtract the distributions, as David pointed out, from the entity level, because that is money that wasn't left in for adequate debt coverage or even adequate margin, whatever we prefer. If you're going to now combine them in a global analysis with some of the individuals, then in those individual returns, you do need to use their K-1 to subtract the distribution that to add the distribution to them. So it's subtracted at the entity level, it's added to the people that got it. And what that does is it does capture it. Well, it will wash. If we got 100% owner, it's going to wash. But it's not going to wash if not all the owners are guarantors. So this will capture the distributions made out to those non-guarantored owners, but wash the distributions that were to the guarantors. And that's the way we can have a global analysis that actually holds water and allows us to do a global debt service coverage ratio and make sure we're meeting the margins that we would like to make. So there you go, David. That was a long answer to what seemed to be a short question. When do we use actual cash flow owners instead of available cash flow? I'm pretty sure the answer is it depends. And check your guidelines, right?
That's what we always do. It's always easy to say that. But there you have it. I mean, these are confusing questions at times. And that's why we came forth with this K-1 and pass-through entity series. We're going to continue our conversations that focus on these items that create some confusion that we encounter on a regular basis when we're underwriting our clients.
Hey, David, can I pop in? I just want to say for those individuals either watching this or you have direct reports who find this confusing, that's actually what Lenders Online Training does, is to get rid of this confusion by providing that foundational piece. This is not training. We don't consider this training. We consider this insights. In our training, we actually walk through how it works. They do case studies, worksheets, and so forth to clear up the confusion. Confused minds say no, David. Confused minds say no. So let's help you if you need it. Clear up the confusion and get to yes when it should be yes. Yep.
Yes. Thanks for coming, everybody. Until next time, have a great day. Bye now.